Welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are moving on to the next episode in my category breakdown series, and in this video we are taking a look at the Best Supporting Actor category. And as always, if you're new to this channel and new to this series, basically all this is there's a playlist if you want to go check out any of the other previous videos, the previous installments in the series, but pretty much all it is just in every video we're just going to take a look at all the different categories at the upcoming Academy Awards, and while we're taking a look at those categories, we're just going to talk about all of the nominees and their specific, in this particular category, their performance, and then at the end of talking about their performance and some facts and stats about the actors, I'll give you my personal ranking for, how I rank the performances, as well as my predictions for how likely it is that I think they win the Academy Award on March 2nd. And I will give you a warning before we get into this video that this was the hardest category for me to rank. Out of all of the other categories, like I talk about some of the technical categories are hard because it's like, how do you rate these performances? Acting, I think, is typically a thing that you can rank. You can kind of say, I prefer this, I prefer that, I don't like this. So I think that's, in terms of it's easier to rank them. But I had such a hard time in this category because I love all 5 of these performances just about the exact same. So, I rated them 1 through 5, but I think tomorrow my feelings could change. I think by the time I've uploaded the video, I'm sure my feelings will change. You could probably interchange my number 1 and my number 5 performance, and I would just be fine with it, because, sure, all 5 of these performances are good. I had such a hard time ranking these personally, so don't even, really look at that when we get into those rankings. Don't take away too much from my personal ranking, because I loved all 5 of these, and so it was so hard to come up with really an order on those. But without further ado, let's take a look at the nominees. The first nominee is Yura Borisov in Anora. This is Yura Borisov's first Oscar nomination. Some of his recent films include Compartment Number 6, Kalashnikov, and Captain Volkonigov Escaped. Yura Borisov was nominated at the BAFTAs, the SAG Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. Now, Yura Borisov is a very interesting case here in this category. I think this weird comparison that I've just come up with that I was thinking about, because yesterday there's 2 different, there's Felicity Jones and Isabella Rossellini, right? Those were 2 performances that are in the Best Supporting Actress category that we talked about. I think Yura Borisov has touches of both of those performances, in the sense I think he's like Felicity Jones, in the sense that he's not in the first half of the movie. He kind of pops up and has a scene kind of around the halfway mark, and then he becomes kind of part of the group, but he's very much kind of a supporting in the background character for a lot of the scenes. And then when we get to the end, he kind of gets a couple big moments and the big things that really kind of make you love him and love that performance that he was able to give. So I do think that he's kind of Felicity Jones-ish in that way, where he doesn't really show up for the first half of the film and then just makes a real big impact on the second half. I also think he's a little Isabella Rossellini-ish, in the sense that a lot of his performance up until those final couple scenes, he is very quiet. He is, I guess I shouldn't even necessarily say he's quiet for a lot of the scenes. He has the one big, his first big scene with Mikey Madison is great, great scene. But then from then until the end of the movie, he is very much just kind of in the background. He's the nice guy, the one that is kind of treating Mikey Madison's character with a little bit more decency and respect than a lot of the other people are in the particular moments of what's going on in the second half, and he is the one that kind of has this kind heart. And so I think it's a little bit more of a reserved acting performance from him really in that second half that does kind of remind me a little bit of Isabella Rossellini, in the sense that so much of her performance is just this kind of subdued and this kind of just nuanced performance, where it's not big, it's not loud, it's not all over the place. It's a very well constrained performance that really brings so much heart and emotion to the story and what's going on with our main character. So I think Yura Borisov kind of has both of those, the elements that you might kind of critique in Felicity Jones or Isabella Rossellini for. Those are both what's going on here in Yura Borisov for his performances. So this is one where I can see where some people maybe don't necessarily fully get the performance or don't fully love it. I will say that for Yura Borisov, before I saw Anora, I had heard there was just a lot of buzz about Mark Eidelstein and then him. Those were the 2 names, the 2 supporting performances that you're hearing a ton about. And I'll be honest, I didn't, before I saw Anora, I didn't really look up too much of the film, and so I didn't know either of these actors, so I didn't know who was who. I guess I'd kind of seen some of the trailers, and so I knew when I heard Yura Borisov and I heard Mark Eidelstein, I knew the two characters that were probably going to be, these two roles based off of the trailers, but I didn't know who was who. And so I'd heard so much buzz for Yura Borisov specifically after the film came out that when I was watching it, I remember that first half thinking, I don't think, because I think I maybe at that point had learned who Mark Eidelstein was, and so I was like, I think that's him. So I was like, I don't think that's Yura Borisov, and so I kept waiting for him. Like, from all the buzz I've been hearing about this, there is a great supporting performance that's coming in this film that hasn't happened yet, and then it does. And like I said, he gets the big scene with Mikey Madison where they're, kind of fighting and all over the house, and it's just chaotic and it's frantic, and he does a great job of kind of playing flustered and upset, and again just really kind of upset is the best emotion that I think I can give for the situation that he finds himself in and what he's having to do and what's happening to him. He does play that very well. And then like I said, I remember watching the rest of Anora, watching all those scenes, and just kept thinking as the film's going on and on and on, and I can tell we're getting toward the end of the film, thinking, where is this moment? Where is the what is everyone falling in love with Yura Borisov's character? What is the idea of, like, where does this performance really shine? And where it really does shine is kind of bookend. It's really in his first scene with Mikey Madison, and it's in his last scene with Mikey Madison, the final closing moments of the film. It's this really kind of touching and heartbreaking and really just kind of, it's the weird kind of, like, it's a warm hug of a moment, but in a real tragic kind of situation that's happening. And so it's this really kind of complex feeling that you have of what's happening in this moment that these two characters are sharing at the end of the film, that just creates a very beautiful and a very raw, very honest moment between these characters. And that moment really just kind of excels, because Mikey Madison, and she's great for the entirety of the film, there's no doubting that, but really from what Yura Borisov, the kind of the heart and the humanity that he brings to that role, especially in those final scenes, is what really kind of makes that moment work, and in turn makes the entire film work. So for my personal ranking, again, don't take this seriously, but I'm putting Yura Borisov in fifth, and it feels so gross saying that because like I just said, I loved his performance. I just happen to love all of these performances, so it's just so hard to rank him, but I'm putting him in fifth, and for my prediction, I'm putting him in fourth. The next nominee is Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. This is Kieran Culkin's first Oscar nomination. He is best known for playing Roman Roy in Succession, but he's also very well known on the film side for his role in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Kieran Culkin has won for Best Supporting Actor at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. He is also nominated at the SAG Awards. Now, this is the role in the category that I do think is getting a little bit of, I don't even necessarily want to say backlash. I'll say it's getting the frontrunner fatigue. I think it's the one where a lot of people, I think, were kind of fine with this performance, but I don't think a lot of people thought this was the big sweeper performance of the year. I think people thought that the supporting actor, maybe Yura Borisov wins here, and maybe Kieran Culkin wins here, and some of the other guys, they win everywhere else. Clarence Macklin takes an award wherever, he's nominated. I think that's kind of how people kind of envisioned the category, and then instead it's turned to just every single body just Kieran Culkin, everyone's awarding Kieran Culkin. And so I do think there is a little bit of the frontrunner fatigue that's kind of settling in with, I don't even necessarily even want to say this performance, as much as it's just kind of settling in, I think, with Kieran Culkin. And the biggest reason I say that is because there's so much, if you go on Twitter, there are so many people, so many conversations, so many discussions, talking points about, oh, we're just awarding Kieran Culkin for playing himself, and that's kind of the thing that's happening a lot. And I will admit that I was a little bit guilty of that on my first watch of A Real Pain. When I saw A Real Pain, this was, a couple months ago, I will say that I did see A Real Pain on one of the days. It actually was my birthday, and so it was a day that I had lined up. I spent my entire birthday just at the movie theater, so I had seen multiple. I had seen, I think, if I remember right, I think A Real Pain was my sixth movie that I had already seen that day in the theaters. And so I will admit that I was kind of to the end of this big run of seeing so many movies, and I saw Real Pain, and I thought, okay, that was fine, but I definitely was kind of just watching this thinking, oh, it's Kieran Culkin doing Kieran Culkin, like that's what he's doing there. And there are definitely some moments or some truth to that of like there are things, or his delivery or his behavior, his mannerisms, they do feel very Romanesque from Succession. But I think on a second watch, I really kind of loved the performance more, and I was able to appreciate the performance a whole lot more for a couple different reasons. I think one, because you kind of get to the understanding of, you get the idea of this character who I think Jesse Eisenberg kind of describes him as like he walks into a room and like you want to be him, but you hate him like as much as you want to be him, and and the specific quote that's in the kind of the third act of the film where he's the emotional moment that he's having with Kieran Culkin's character. He kind of tells him, "You have this ability to walk in the room, and you're like you instantly bright up the room, and you're this kind of this star. You walk into the room, and you're just everything is just like you just light up that room as soon as you walk in." And then as soon as you walk in, you take a shit everywhere, and you just ruin the mood, and you just completely like. He has this ability of being this super likable and super dislikable character on a given moment. At any given moment, he kind of can drastically kind of swing, and he's so polarizing. And I think that so what Kieran Culkin's doing, I think he's executing that range, and he's executing. There are so many scenes, the moments where he's just so, you know, I'm drawing a. Is her name Marsha? I feel like for some reason I think her name's Marsha, but one of the other girls that's on the tour ride, where he's just so personable and he's so nice and friendly with her and getting to know her and getting to know her story, and he's so compassionate. And so like there's these moments where you're like, oh, this guy is such an amazing character, and then he gets these moments where he just kind of gets either stressed out or panics or freaks out about something that maybe isn't necessarily the biggest deal, and then he's just kind of ruining the vibe, ruining the mood for everyone else that's there with him. And so he just has such these drastic swings in his character that I think Kieran Culkin specifically does an excellent job of being able to reach both of those ranges, and in like flipping a switch, being able to get to both of those emotions really well. And so I do think that because of that, it is this thing that we're kind of just like, oh, we're critiquing Kieran Culkin for just playing himself, but the character is written in a specific way for Kieran Culkin to really execute that role. I don't know who else Jesse Eisenberg could have cast in that role that I think would have nailed the essence and really kind of brought that character to life the way that Jesse Eisenberg was able to write him, and the way that Kieran Culkin was able to portray him and really kind of bring that humanity out of him. Because there's just, for a character that has as many scenes as he does in this film that make you either cringe or just make you mad, the way that he's reacting or the way that he's treating people, there's so many moments where like he should be one of the most just a very hateable character, and then you still get to the end and you're just like, I love this character, I love this guy, I'm rooting for the best. It kind of ends on this ambiguous ending of you don't necessarily know exactly what's next for him, but you kind of are just hopeful for him, and you're just saying, okay, I hope that this experience, did it change him? Is it something that moving forward he's going to become a better person, and he's going to kind of start making the necessary steps to improving his life? You don't necessarily know, but the ambiguous ending really makes you hopeful for that character because you just want the best for him. And the reason you care so much is because of the performance that Kieran Culkin was able to give. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Kieran Culkin in fourth, and again, don't take this too seriously, but for my prediction, I'm putting him in first. The next nominee is Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown. This is Edward Norton's fourth Oscar nomination, and he is still looking for his first win. He was nominated in 2015 for Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, in 1999 for American History X, and in 1997 for Primal Fear. Edward Norton was nominated at the BAFTAs, the SAG Awards, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. Now, in these two acting categories that we've discussed so far in the videos, multiple times I've said where on a second watch, I'm starting to like these characters a little bit more, and I'm understanding a little bit more about what got them nominated or what made the characters, shine. Edward Norton is kind of this interesting example of, I got it the first time. It was one of those, when I watched this film the first time, he doesn't, again, it's a supporting role, right? He's not out there, he's not, yelling and screaming and giving these big Oscar performance, these big scenes. A lot of what he's doing is just kind of the subtle, kind of subdued performance, and it worked for me immediately on the first watch. There was so much about both Edward Norton and I should have looked up her name, the actress that plays his wife in the film. So much of what they're doing, just the scenes of them watching Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan, watching him perform, they just have the feeling of like the proud parents in so many of those scenes. The way that they're smiling, the way that Edward Norton as Pete Seeger is watching on and he's realizing we did it, like we're saving the folk music isn't going anywhere. We've got Bob Dylan. It's in good hands. There's just these moments where he's so proud and he's so happy to see this, to have found this kid, and to, I guess he didn't even really find him. Timothée Chalamet found them. But, to be able to just have this kid, to have this talent, and to be able to realize that he has a career and he has the future. This is the future of what we're trying to establish here at the Newport, folk festival. Like this is what it's all about, is finding these guys, finding these people and turning them into the superstars, turning them into these celebrity folk singers. And so he has so many of those just moments that aren't the most, out there big acting, but it's just so very kind of pulled and reeled in, and it really is just the proud parent, I feel like, is the best way to kind of describe his character, and specifically his relationship with Timothy Chalamet. And that whole relationship worked really well for me. There's also multiple scenes with him in the film as well, that kind of stand out as kind of the big acting highlights for me. Kind of that opening scene where he's singing, "This land is your land." He has the big scene. Really, I mean, the big scene at the end of the film, at the Newport Film Folk Festival, the big moment there of, as Bob Dylan's going electric, kind of the chaos that's bringing for him. He gets this big kind of, that is his one kind of moment in the film, the big moment he kind of gets. But he also just has these beautiful. He has the monologue specifically with Timothy Chalamet. It kind of has that moment with like the seesaw analogy, and bringing the spoonfuls of sand, trying to level out the seesaw. That analogy is like a good moment, and that probably is his Oscar clip if the Oscars gets their act together and plays clips before the performances. That's probably his clip. But for me, I think the scene for me that was like kind of like really solidified it for me, of like he's doing an excellent job in this film, is the scene where he's kind of hosting that TV program, and he's talking to the other musician that's there, and having him kind of play, and because it's like it's acting on top of acting, like he's acting for a different camera, like pretending to be like he's this television host while also pretending to be Pete Seeger, pretending to be a television host. So it's like this kind of this scene where it's just like you see he's kind of channeling what he's been doing all film, but it's just he's doing it in such a kind of an elevated way in that moment where it's really kind of dialed in. And then when Bob Dylan comes in, it's watching these two kind of play together, and he gets another kind of one of those moments of just being kind of sitting back and in the background and watching Bob Dylan kind of take over this moment, and you just feel that the best way to just continually to describe this performance and why it worked so well for me is he really just brings that proud parent energy that really kind of helps, along with Monica Barbaro, who we talked about yesterday. I think she's kind of a great kind of bringing Bob Dylan down a little bit in terms of like is kind of more frustrated with him, in terms of, because he's kind of doing all this and he's being this antagonizing, kind of contrarian. I think, on the other hand, you got Edward Norton's character, who also is kind of grounding him a little bit, but it's more so through like, because of how proud he is of him and being able to kind of, I think you can feel Bob Dylan kind of feels that love and kind of feels that appreciation that Edward Norton's character has for him. And so it's just the dynamics that both of, Monica Barbaro in yesterday's video, Edward Norton in today's video, the way that they are able to, those relationships that they have with Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan, really just kind of bring the film together for me. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Edward Norton in third, and for my prediction, I'm putting him in second. The next nominee is Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. This is Guy Pearce's first Oscar nomination. He is known for his roles in Memento, LA Confidential, and The Hurt Locker. Guy Pearce was nominated at the BAFTAs, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the Golden Globes. And this is back-to-back here, where Guy Pearce is another one of those performances where I got it on the first watch. I was so mesmerized and just captivated by every moment that Guy Pearce is on screen in The Brutalist. And he gets this very kind of fascinating role where he in the first scene is just this, he's a dick, he's just very rude, he's very confrontational with Adrian Brody and with his cousin as they're kind of redoing his library, because it's supposed to be the surprise, and sure enough he's surprised, and he says later on the film that he doesn't handle surprises very well, and took it out on Adrian Brody. And so you kind of get this first scene, and the very first time you see him, you're thinking like, okay, he's really like he's going to be the villain of the story. He is the antagonizing force. He is the one that, is just like, he's the bad guy. If you're putting a label, if you have to have a bad guy in your film, like this is the character that he's filling. And then the next time you see him is, it's several, maybe 20-ish minutes or so later when he comes back the next scene, and all of a sudden he's this very nice, soft-spoken, just well-spoken person, and he has this conversation at the first scene with Adrian Brody at the diner, and they're kind of just discussing his architecture and kind of discussing the laying the groundwork for learning about his story. And then he gets the kind of the continued scene. It kind of continues on into kind of that dinner party, and all of a sudden you're seeing like, oh, okay, maybe Guy Pearce, maybe his character, maybe he isn't such a bad guy. Maybe he is, he's was misunderstood because we learned to find out that his mom died at the beginning, so he's a little more stressed out the first time you see him. So now the second time you're like, okay, this is a nice guy. This is we're someone that you can kind of root for, I guess, in this story, but it's someone that you're liking, and he's employing Adrian Brody again to build this complex, this big, architectural building outside of their house on like the perch there on the hill. And so all of a sudden you're just like, okay, this is a nice guy, and he's providing the American dream, right, for Adrian Brody, and he is going to be kind of the the force that is kind of going to make this story go. And so you kind of, and specifically, I need to before we get too far ahead, when we're talking about that kind of that dinner scene, that conversation, that story that he's telling to Adrian Brody, where he's just kind of sitting there and telling about his mother and his grandparents and writing them a check, and that whole story is just captivating to me. The way that Guy Pearce is able to deliver that, the way he's able to, I mean, really, all it is it's not the most memorable or the most like amazing story, right, that he's telling, but it still is. You're just captivated by the performance and the way that he was able to channel this, drawing a blank on what the character's first name is, but Van Buren, but the way he's just able to channel this character and to be able to really get in there and to just deliver that performance. Like, I feel like in that moment I lose Guy Pearce, and he has fully become this character, and that's just, phenomenal acting. And that's just the first half of this film. Then you get to the second half, and again, this is where I really don't want to, just to say too much about the film, because obviously this is, of all of the nominees here, this is like the newest release of them, so there's a chance you haven't seen it yet. So I don't really want to say where his character kind of goes in the second half. Don't want to give too many spoilers, but his character then kind of takes another turn as the film kind of goes on, and his character gets, I don't even necessarily want to say like more depth, but he just kind of, his true nature and his true, and what he represents in terms of this story, in terms of the allegory, in terms of the kind of the symbolism that's being told through his performance, kind of starts getting revealed a little bit more. And so much of, as this film goes on, obviously Adrian Brody's the main character and he's the rock, and he's the one that everything, we're kind of seeing everything through his eyes, or at least through his family's eyes. But it's so much the Guy Pearce's character is the one that is kind of bending and controlling the story, and is really kind of fitting this all to fit into the analogy that that Brady Corbet is kind of telling with this story. And so for Guy Pearce, it's just one of those roles where, in terms of the supporting actors, he's the one that's on screen the most. He's the one that I think that kind of has the most sway and control of the film, and so much of that weight is just on his shoulders in terms of making sure that he delivers a good performance, and he really does. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Guy Pearce in second, and for my prediction, I'm putting him in third. And the final nominee is Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. This is Jeremy Strong's first Oscar nomination. He is best known for playing Kendall Roy in Succession, but he is also known for his film roles in The Trial of the Chicago 7, The Big Short, and The Judge. Jeremy Strong was nominated at the BAFTAs, the SAG Awards, and the Golden Globes. And The Apprentice is a interesting film to discuss here, because I think for so much of us, and so for so many people that were watching this for the first time, you go into that film and you're really glued into Sebastian Stan. You're glued into the lead performance. You're glued into how is he going to become Donald Trump? How is he going to become this character, and how is he going to deliver this performance? So the first time I saw The Apprentice, I was just glued and just dialed in on Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump. And the opening scene, you're kind of getting little hints here and there where you're like, okay, Sebastian Stan is, kind of getting into the character. It's a very young Donald Trump at this point early in the film, and so you can kind of feel, you're seeing some of the things, you're seeing some mannerisms, but I wasn't, pretty early, I'm like, I don't know if I'm completely buying this yet. And then in that opening scene, the introductory, if you've seen how they introduce Jeremy Strong's character, the way they shoot it from him just blankly staring down at the camera from like across the room, it was just very creepy and very intense, to the point that I started thinking, like, am I going to be watching a movie here about Donald Trump, and there's someone else in the film that I'm more, not necessarily like scared, but I'm more like that guy is evil. Like there is something going on with this guy over here that I'm more worried about what this character is, and that's sure enough, especially the beginning of this film, that really is what this film was, and it completely. As I'm watching the film at the beginning, I was so like I knew I just called him Kendall Roy. I knew Jeremy Strong was in the film, but like I didn't necessarily know to what extent or how big of a role he was going to be. I guess I knew he was kind of the big supporting character because he's on the poster, right? But I was still kind of like I just didn't know to what extent was Cohn going to play in this story, and it is a massive part because you find out that in this story this is where Donald Trump learned a lot of his his some of his the way that the things that he has kind of taken into his political career, the three keys to success, kind of the arrogance and the way that Jeremy Strong portrays this character is kind of the way that you see Donald Trump kind of taking those mannerisms, and you see the way that he was able to kind of take the things from him to become. And Sebastian Stan does an excellent job of that later in the film, where you start to see he's very much playing that role the way that Jeremy Strong played it early in the film. And so for me, Jeremy Strong was just one of those performances. The first time I saw it, I was kind of just blown away because of how much I was surprised by how much I was loving his performance and by how much he was really just kind of commanding the screen and was really just kind of taking over. The second time I watched this, it just solidified what I remember from the first time seeing this film. It really just solidified the performance in general, the ferocity, the meanness, the grittiness that he kind of brings to this role, and the way that he's just the things that he says, the scene where he's where he calls and is treating that secretary that answers the phone, just that killer, that ruthless, just rude grit that he has to him was just such a fascinating and gripping character that I was just you it's one of those that you're just kind of appalled by the character, but you're just fascinated. And every time he's on screen, you're kind of like, oh, what's he going to do now? What's he going to say now? What else is he bringing to this film? And again, that's just kind of the first half. And a lot of these specifically, it seems like this category, these the supporting performances, you have a first half of the film where that's the energy they're bringing, and then in the second half, you're getting this different energy, and that really is, again, without really spoiling what kind of happens to Jeremy Strong's character in the second half. But obviously, things start changing, and he's in a different space, obviously, as the years have been going by. And really, those final moments of Jeremy Strong is one of those where it's the same thing. He brings this character that you hated so much early in the film, but you were like fascinated by his ruthlessness and his attitude, and then all of a sudden you get to the end and you don't necessarily feel bad or you don't necessarily feel sorry, but you have some kind of sympathy and empathy towards what this character is going through, and you kind of have a little bit of a, I guess, just appreciation, and I think a lot of the reason you have any of that, where you feel any of that, is because of the way that Jeremy Strong is able to portray that, is the way he's able to get that emotion through you at the end of the film, where this character that any other actor, you would have just like hated him all the way through, and then you get to the end and you're like, what do I care about any struggles or whatever you're going through in your life? Like, we saw who you were at the beginning, we saw your true colors at the beginning. But with Jeremy Strong, he's still somehow able to kind of get you to have a little bit of a humanity and feel a little sad about what's happening with this character. And the only reason that works at all, the only reason this film was able to do that, really is because of the performance from Jeremy Strong. So for my personal ranking, I'm putting Jeremy Strong in first, and for my prediction, I'm putting him in fifth. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of this category and who you're rooting for to win. Also, let me know if there's any snubs in this category that you would have liked to have seen get in there. I think the biggest one, obviously, is Clarence Macklin. Denzel Washington, I think, had a little bit of a buzz at one point, but that just never really took off. But yeah, let me know if there was anyone else you would have liked to have seen in this category. And again, I said it at the beginning, I'm saying it again now at the end in case you skipped all the way to here. Don't take my personal rankings on this one so serious. Like, you could flip Jeremy Strong and Yura Borisov and I wouldn't care. Like, all 5 of these performances were all the same level of good to me. This was so hard to rank this category, but I did my best. But yeah, let me know all of that down below in the comments. And if you would like to like this video and then subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes in the category breakdown series, I would greatly appreciate it, and have a great day.